In the beginning of 2020, the anime world was shocked by the sudden cancellation of the new series Interspecies Reviewer. Citing inappropriate content by many broadcast companies around the world, the series was almost wiped out completely from every television and streaming site. But this anime has done more than make people blush. It has shed light on how far, and for how long, anime has crossed the decency line. My name is Mark Eric Seabon. Come with me as I travel across Japan to better understand the culture that created this unique art form and to understand how anime changed Japan and the world. Here on Anime in the Real World. There's no doubt that anime has been entangled in controversy ever since its conception. From war propaganda to a tool for recruitment, from showing the need to keep Protocol 9 enacted and as a threat to another's points of view, anime has not been able to escape this lot in life. Interspecies Reviewer is just the newest in a long line of controversy. Anime, at its very essence, seems willing and proud of testing every boundary that comes in its path. But all good art tests boundary, doesn't it? Matricide, torture, sexual abuse, genocide, pandemics, and even physically defying breasts have been a common sight on our television and computer monitors for years. So why now is there an issue? Why has Interspecies Reviewer become the sacrificial lamb for the decency movement? To even begin to find the answer, we need to go back in time to see other animes that stirred the controversial stew. The 1998 A Kite and the 2008 Kite Liberator follows two separate stories of vengeance shelled out by underage schoolgirls. These original video animations, OVAs, written and directed by Yatsuomi Uematsu, have been cited by critics for its gratuitous use of violence and its unabashed sex scenes. These animes sound like they were primed for cancellation, right? Well, no. The Kite series was never cancelled or banned, and it's easy to find in stores or online, and you can even watch a censored version on streaming sites right now. The Kite series is so well respected that the Academy Award-winning director Quentin Tarantino used it to inspire actress Chiaki Koriyama's role as Gogo Yabari in Kill Bill. It might shock some fans of the slice of life genre to know that there's a subgenre called incest anime. The 2008 Kiss X Sis, the 2010 Oriimo, and the 2017 Eromanga Sensei are only a small example of this subgenre. Incest animes like these three are not hentai, but the subject matter is just as taboo. Animes in this subgenre vary in storytelling quality, but the incest overtones are crystal clear. So you would think animes that involve an emotional and a physical relationship between brothers and sisters would be cancelled before the ink hit the paper. But you'd be wrong. Although these animes never got dubbed into any Western languages, these were never banned from broadcasts and can be streamed today. This subgenre has such a following that there are even video games on multiple platforms to continue the stories. This 2004 psychological thriller by the late Satoshi Kon revolves around a string of assaults in a Tokyo suburb. The depiction of the assaults and the psychological torment of the victims and of those living in the area is never dumbed down in this anime. This level of violence and psychological torture should be no surprise since it comes from the creator of Perfect Blue and Paprika, two movies that can be called as the poster childs for controversial subject matter. Violence in anime. Surely this was banned and the series was cancelled. Not even close. Paranoia Agent was received well by most critics whose only complaint was about the animation style, and not the anime's content. This 1992 movie by Hiroshi Hirata took 5 years to produce. It was all done by Hirata's own hand and took over 5,000 sheets of animation to complete. But this amazing feat is greatly overshadowed by the movie's subject matter. Midori's story revolves around a young girl who, after her mother's death, is left to fend for herself. This is when she meets a man who leads her to a life in the circus. This anime is known for its graphic depiction of child sexual abuse, gore, violence, animal cruelty, and so much more, with almost every critic claiming it as one of the darkest and sickest animes of all time. Midori had to be cancelled and banned from public consumption, right? Well, yes and no. For many years since the film was independently made, Hirata only screened it on the rarest of occasions. Although the original 1992 cut was banned in Japan for years with only a heavily censored version available since 1994 for viewing, this all changed in 2013 when the original 16mm print was in the process of being restored, and as of early 2020, Midori is planned to be released in its unedited entirety worldwide on Blu-ray. Boku no Pico is arguably one of the most controversial animes of all time, and it's not even an anime. This 3 OVA series is a hentai. Boku no Pico tells the story of an ordinary man bored with his life who falls in love with a very young boy while on vacation. So, a series that shows underage sex. This must have had its production cancelled, right? Not exactly. Although the series did get banned for purchase and viewing in many countries, the fact that it was a hentai meant it was never aired in Japan, and it is easily available for purchase all over the country. In 2007, in the middle of the series episodes hitting the store shelves, there seems to have been a compromise met. A heavily watered down remaster called Pico, My Little Summer Story was released. In this version of the story, any mention to sexual interaction between an older man and a younger boy are omitted, and the story revolves around a more wholesome relationship between the two of them. But anime is not the only form of Japanese art that has been rife with content controversy. The horror subgenre of dementia has been unnerving people for decades. The term dementia derives from the medical catch-all that covers the symptoms of cognitive decline. Dementia is designed to leave the viewers disoriented and disturbed as the story progresses. Although there are many examples of dementia in anime and manga, the works of Junichi Ito are arguably the definitive for the subgenre. Ito's 1998 work called Ozomaki uses a strange form of geometry to instill discomfort into the readers. The use of spirals, created by a curse, have had readers feeling sick and disgusted since the initial printing. This uneasiness caused by Ozomaki is strangely close to what many people who suffer from the condition trypophobia, the fear of closely packed holes, describe. So you would think that a manga series that triggers a phobia would be cancelled before it even went to print. Not at all. Ozomaki has been praised by critics for doing exactly what it was sent out to do: scare its readers. Ito's work has even been adapted into a live-action movie in 2000, and it has been announced that Uzumaki will finally get its anime miniseries adaptation with a tentative 2021 release date. Clearly, anime and manga have seemed to enjoy crossing what many consider the decency line, and they've been enjoying it for years. So why now, and why was Interspecies Reviewer the tipping point?
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
To even begin answering that question, we need to take a look at how sex is viewed differently all around the world. Across this planet, with its 195 recognized nations and its 7.6 billion people, there are just as many points of view on sex. Be it for cultural or religious reasons, the subject of sex has been a decisive conversation since we were telling our first stories around the campfire in our primordial caves. In this day and age, it is the cultural mores and how a society different from our own views sex that we have to remember before we pass judgment. How another culture views the man's and the woman's roles in adult relationships, the age of consent, and their views on prostitution all affect and even change their art. And that leads me to my next point. Anime is its very own form of art. As I've said before in previous episodes, anime is just another way of telling a story. No different than that book on your nightstand or the TV show you've been binge watching. But anime is a distinctly Japanese form of storytelling. In every hand-drawn cell and every page of a manga, the culture, ideas, politics, religion, hopes and fears, and dreams are deeply ingrained, for better or for worse. But because anime is a drawn media, it has been cataloged with Western animation. And although there is no end of adult cartoons in the West, very few have ever attempted the harder subjects that anime has never feared from. And just like in Western cartoons, not all animes are made for children. At this point in time, you might be wondering why I have only been focusing on sex and not on violence. Well, because when you compare violence in media to sex in media, there is no comparison. Yes, in years past, the news was reporting about a high level of violence in movies and video games, but there was a compromise made, and that's why we have the MPA rating guide and the ESRB rating guide today. But especially here in the West, sex is still seen as a socially immoral and reprehensible subject matter to talk about or view openly, no matter what rating you put on it. So is that it? Is it just the over-sexualized content that made Interspecies Reviewer the new case study for anime going too far? Well, no, I wish it was that easy. Interspecies Reviewer has one more cloud hanging over it: its release date. In the early part of 2019, the United Nations called for additions to be added to the Protocol on the Conventions on the Rights of the Child. This groundbreaking 30-year-old document was enacted to protect children around the world from becoming child soldiers and poverty and many, many other things. But it has grown to so much more. It has also set up protection for children from child prostitution and human trafficking. A very important document, especially in this cyber age where child pornography and child sexual assault seem to be on an incline in many countries. But within this new protocol, many have read it as something that will greatly affect the anime and manga world. In the already established Section 56, such things as written materials and figures depicting children in sexual ways should be banned. In the additions to the protocol, they are adding drawn images to the list. This means any manga or anime that depicts a child in anything that could be perceived as an inappropriate situation will be immediately, internationally banned. This might seem far-fetched and even extreme, but it's already happening. In early 2020, Australian Senator Sterling Griff has called for a ban on any anime depicting a child character in any sexually explicit situation. Then in October of 2020, Australian Customs have stopped receiving and started sending back any anime-themed adult content such as marital aids and hentai DVDs. Now, we're not going to get into the issue of freedom of expression in art or the ever-growing child abuse issue. If you want that discussion, check out episode 7, Winning Smears of this documentary. What I will get into is why this protocol is relevant to the cancellation of Interspecies Reviewer. You see, ultimately, it isn't the content solely contained in Interspecies Reviewer that led to its cancellation. There are no children in the anime, and there are far more graphic animes out there. The ultimate downfall for the series is the fact that it's just a product of its time. The new additions to the UN protocol has caused many in the anime industry to have a hair-trigger reaction to everything. And mix in the cultural taboos of sex, well, something had to give, and unfortunately, Interspecies Reviewer was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The legacy of the series isn't a sad one because just as soon as it was cancelled, it was back on TV. Although there is no talk of dubbing any more than the first episode into English, the series has been able to see its subbed day in the sun. Even if the original network airing the show in Japan pulled it, other Japanese networks just put the series at a later time slot. And it might be surprising, but countries like Australia and New Zealand never banned airing the show at all. Ultimately, the cancellation of Interspecies Reviewer has done more good than harm for the anime industry. It has opened a door to a question that we all should be asking ourselves. Is a show's content instinctually bad if it crosses a perceived line? Or is it us, as individuals, and not the politicians who should decide what is and isn't appropriate for us to view?
Hey, are you listening?
With the new amendments to the Protocol on the Convention on the Rights of the Child gaining favor and talks of the repeal of Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution and the uptick in copyright crackdowns, anime's controversial temper is far from mellowing. This might be the start of a new era in anime. Perhaps Japan will enact their own Hays Code and start self-censoring their shows. Studios will always be willing to test their culturally accepted limits, and politicians will always be eager to put them back into the perceived place. But it's up to us, and us alone, to say when a line's been crossed.